Weight of diesel locomotive. A diesel locomotive is a type of train powered by a diesel engine instead of a steam engine. A weight of diesel locomotive might be the most used heavy-haul cargo carrier around the world. Due to this reason, it is important to know the weight of a diesel locomotive. Some of the diesel locomotive are very heavyweight. So, in this blog, we are going to have a look at the different types of diesel locomotives and their weight. What is a diesel locomotive? Diesel locomotives are electric traction engine powered by diesel fuel. The design of the diesel locomotive was invented in Germany in 1892, but it was not until 1910 that a practical model could be built and demonstrated to the public. Early examples were often steam engines with an auxiliary combustion engine for use when the steam was being used for other purposes. However, by 1914 most of the locomotives were converted to burn fuel oil or natural gas instead of coal and water vapor. The diesel engine is a very efficient engine in terms of power-to-weight ratio. The design has improved dramatically since the early models. A diesel locomotive may have a single engine or multiple engines, depending on the number of axles it has and its design. What's the weight of a diesel locomotive? The weight of a diesel locomotive is usually between 9,500 to 16,000 pounds, 4 tons. The maximum payload for any type of diesel locomotive is usually around 125 tons. The weight of a diesel locomotive varies depending on the type of fuel used, whether it is water or oil-based, and how many engines are used. Types of diesel locomotives. There are several types of diesel locomotives, which vary in weight and performance. Below are the different types of diesel locomotives. 1. Diesel locomotive, electric. These locomotives have a separate electric motor on one or more axles that drives the traction motors, which is mounted at each end of the truck frame with a gearbox between the two. 2. Diesel locomotive, multiple unit. These locomotives have one or more diesel engines on each truck frame which are connected to a single traction motor at each end of the truck frame with a gearbox between the two. There is usually one cab on top of the truck for the engineer and one cab on top of each truck. How much does a diesel locomotive weigh? The weight of a diesel locomotive varies depending on the type of fuel used, whether it is water or oil-based, and how many engines are used. Diesel locomotives. These locomotives use either steam, diesel or electric power to drive their traction motors. Diesel engines are powered by diesel fuel, which is the result of the high-temperature distillation of crude oil. The fuel is heated in a water-jacketed boiler to drive an engine that generates electricity for the traction motors. Water or steam locomotives. The steam locomotive uses hot water to drive its traction motors. The steam is produced by burning coal in a boiler. Oil locomotives. The oil locomotive uses diesel fuel to produce heat for the engine and power the traction motors, which are connected directly to the engines with gears that change speeds depending on how much power is needed. How much does a steam locomotive weigh? The weight of a steam locomotive depends on the type of power used to drive its traction motors and how many engines are used in each unit. The weight of a steam locomotive also depends on how many wheels are used in each unit and whether it uses electric or diesel power to drive its traction motors. Steam locomotives range in price from around $500,000 to over $2 million. The main factors related to diesel locomotive are power rating, which is the amount of power that a diesel locomotive can produce. The higher the power rating, the more powerful and faster it will be. Weight, which is how much weight a diesel locomotive can support. The higher the weight, the more expensive it will be. Fuel efficiency, which is how much fuel a diesel locomotive uses to produce its power output. The higher the fuel efficiency, the less fuel that is used to produce its power output. Speed, which is how fast a diesel locomotive can travel. The higher the speed, the faster it will be. Cost, which is how much a diesel locomotive costs to build and operate. The lower the cost, the less expensive it will be to build and operate. Engine capacity or cylinder size of a diesel locomotive. A diesel locomotive can have 1, 2 or 4 engines. The higher the engine capacity, the more powerful and faster it will be. How much does a diesel locomotive weigh? The weight of a diesel locomotive depends on how many engines are used in each unit and whether it uses electric or diesel power to drive its traction motors. Diesel locomotives range in weight from around 40,000 pounds, 18,144 kilograms, for a short-haul passenger train to over 160,000 pounds, 72,018 kilograms, for an intermodal freight train or tank car. Conclusion? The weight of a diesel locomotive is important to know. If the weight is too high, it will be difficult to operate. If the weight is too low, it will be difficult to pull heavy loads. The mile per hour is important to know. The higher the speed, the faster it will be. In conclusion, diesel locomotives are a type of train that is used for transporting people and freight over long distances by pulling cars on their own tracks or as part of a rail network. It is also referred to as a diesel-electric locomotive. They have a lot of advantages over other types of trains because they are cheaper to build and operate. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on diesel locomotives. If you have any questions or concerns about this topic, please feel free to leave a comment below and I will get back to you as soon as possible.